This is afternoon programming with L. Hi everybody, welcome to episode 27 of afternoon programming. I almost said not all here because I don't know, my brain is mushy right now. Sorry for not dropping an episode last week, but things got busy. Didn't have time to really do anything, and there wasn't a lot for me to talk about because everything that I have to talk about is today. In episode 27 of afternoon programming, I have a special guest, as you can see if you're watching, but if you're listening, you haven't heard them say anything. So, the special guest I have today is my lovely partner, Pea The Feary.
Hello.
Welcome. Thanks for being on the podcast, babe.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
And getting us kombucha.
Of course, I do what I can. So a lot of interesting things happened. In the world recently. Well, really, let's talk about my world because that's what matters the most. Sorry, everybody. We're in the process of moving. So if you see in the box in the background, it's because there's stuff in there and we're getting ready to move in like a week. Oh, yeah, today is a week. Today's a week shit. Until we move. When this comes out, it'll be 6 days till we move. Ready to move, so the next episode after this will be in a whole new location, and it'll be really cool because the place I moved to looks beautiful. Thanks to our partner, she picked it, and so yeah, it'll be cool. But been moving, been working a lot, been working like crazy, and but as far as what's going on in the entertainment world, because that's the world that I live in, and I guess maybe, well, you live more in the spiritual world, I guess. Spiritual.
I suppose. I
don't know if is there ever controversy in the spiritual world?
Like once a year.
Once a year, really? Is it like?
I mean, that I know of, but also I feel like I'm very detached from any world.
Oh, that makes sense. But like, for example, like what's a controversy that happened in the spiritual world?
There was this human who decided that spirituality was a Luciferian agenda and that spiritualists were demon-possessed evil people that needed to be saved by Jesus. And she used to be a spiritualist herself, a star seed. And then she said, all that shit is demonic and y'all need to go to church. And all she does is preach on Instagram now and share Bible verses.
Oh, so she flipped. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Like intensely harsh.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's really wild. But, I mean, things like that happen all the time, don't they, in the world?
Yeah, I mean, it goes the other way all the time, you know?
Some people who are religion, they flip to spirituality or they just stop believing.
I hate Christians. They're terrible. I'm a demon. You know?
It's so interesting because in a way, when you think about it, I think I told you this before, and I'm pretty sure you probably have had this thought. Because I know you play your, what would you call her, your coach? Like she's a spiritual coach, right? Or is she more so just like a motivational coach or something?
She's a spiritual business coach.
Gotcha. Because when I hear you playing her things, like she sounds like she's preaching.
She does sound like she's preaching.
And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. There's like, this is a thing of, it basically sounds like she's taking the spiritual people to church. You know, there's no building, but it's just more so like we're here. And so it's very interesting because the same thing happens in like music. When you go to concerts, you're kind of in a way going to church. I think because you're all focused on this one person and you're just kind of like praising this person for like the music that they made and stuff. And so in a way, not like to the extent of, well, maybe some people, but into the extent of like, you know, this person is Jesus or whatever. So it's interesting. But being on this topic, this is one thing that I've been thinking about, and I've spoken to you a lot about this, but this is more so for like, I guess the listeners, and you can chime in. So I was raised Catholic, right? I grew up Catholic. My mom was Catholic. My dad was Catholic. Coming from a Latin household, that's a normal thing for the most part. And church is really boring because all you do in Catholic services most of the time is you're sitting down, standing up, singing, sitting down, standing up, singing, sitting down, standing up. Every now and then you'll go pray at a candle and Jesus is above the candle and you light a candle to kind of like, please do this for me, blah, blah, blah. Most of the time I spent time in the playground. There's a playground at the church, and me and my little brother and sometimes my sister, we would go swinging and just we're there the whole church period just because we were like let's get out of here. You know, we weren't demonic or anything, but it was just boring. Like, church is not a place for children, I like to think. It doesn't seem like it, because a kid doesn't have the ability to understand church for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Except for you remember that Vine video or that TikTok video of that little kid who was like praying like a pastor? Mm-hmm. She's like, Jesus is Lord. And I'm like, does she know what she's saying?
Right.
And so, but I say all to say that in all of my years of going to church and people talking to me, having experiences going to Baptist churches and other Christian churches and other churches in different religions, how come nobody ever talks about angels and how weird they are? Like, nobody ever brought it up that these things look almost like demons. Like, they almost look like they look like scary monsters out of a movie. What I don't understand, and I know you had a point of view of this where, like, what I don't understand is how come nobody ever brought up just how strange angels look, and also kind of the craziest things that happened in the Bible where people kind of were just like, yep, this is what it means, and just ran with it. Like, nobody ever brought
Abraham lived to 900 years old.
Whoa.
Like 900, 700.
Jesus. I don't even see. I'd want to live to 500 and then I'm good after that.
Jesus Christ.
I think that'd be cool to see, like, technology advance. That'd be my only reason. But that's like really wild to me, because I think I didn't know about angels probably how they looked until you told me. I had no idea. And because, of course, I guess in our society, for the most part, in movies and in entertainment, they kind of like, it's just a person with angel wings and they're wearing white, you know, but really it's like 1,000 eyes, these rings that are spinning around them.
They did not put the biblical angels in movies at all.
I know. And like, I wonder, like, how come that's like one thing? And it made me think of when I realized, like, I think, of course, your phone's always listening. And of course, when I first said that, TikTok started popping up, here's some angel stuff. And I'm like, this is weird. And then there's like a hierarchy of angels of who's the most powerful and to who's, I guess, just as not as powerful, but still powerful. And it's just weird of me that that's a thing. Like, nobody ever told me about that. Nobody ever talked about that. They almost look like something from Greek mythology in a way of how they look. And I'm just like, this is really strange. Because, like, when did you first learn about, like, angels? When did you look at, like, read it? Or did someone read it to you and be like, hold up?
I was a child, and my favorite book of the Bible was Revelation, because I'm insane. And I would just read Revelations. The only book of the Bible that I would read over and over again was Psalms. There's another one, Proverbs, and then Book of Revelation. Like, as a kid, I would read those over and over again. Psalms and Proverbs are a lot more. It's like poems. But Revelations talks about
that's when everything,
all sorts of shit.
The world was blowing up or whatever. That's crazy. Because, like, it's funny because the stuff that you're saying, I heard about it, but I don't know about it. And so, like, I've heard of Revelations and stuff like that. But it's like, because I guess maybe it never went in depth for me. Like, whenever someone said Revelations, people just told you, hey, the world's ending. That's all you need to know. Like, they never went into detail.
I wanted to know about the moon turning blood red, and I wanted to know about the fire burning everything I needed to know.
I had that idea. I'm like, okay, so the world's going to be on fire. Okay, I get that. That makes sense. Which kind of sounds like climate change. No, but it's just like wild that stuff like that. Like, why? See, this is where I feel like, I'm not going to say my parents, but maybe the generation before us or the generation before then failed us to make the Bible exciting. Because really, when I first started learning about it, I'm like, this is so boring. This is boring. I don't care.
Did you read about Job? That was not boring.
Job? Which one's Job?
That's a depressing story.
Was Job the guy that had everything?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And God allowed him to lose everything in terrible, horrible ways as a test. That shit pissed me off.
I think, wasn't he was good looking, he was strong and stuff.
He had all them kids, a wife, these cows and shit.
Doesn't that sound like people in the world today a little bit? Some men, they have everything, but then they lose it all. Isn't that the story? Isn't that the...
The story was that the devil was like, So Job only likes you because you gave him all this shit.
Oh,
if
and
you
he
take the
was
shit away,
testing him.
Job's not gonna like you anymore. And then God was like, oh, bet. All right.
Wait a second.
And then the devil was like, sweet, I'm about to take all his shit. And God was like, okay, then. All right.
So wait, it sounds like God was gambling. Like it sounds like he was like, okay, bet you want to put money on it.
That story, I think that story is probably one of the biggest reasons why I'm not a Christian. Because I was just like, you're out of control. Like, how dare you?
It almost sounds like God got persuaded by the devil to gamble. So in a way, it's almost seemed like he was like, you know, instead of going, no, I trust him.
Fuck out of here. Like, leave him alone. You can't touch him.
That's interesting. That
was the rule. He couldn't touch Job. But everyone in his family,
he could. Oh.
insane.
Such a weird story. I remember a good friend of mine actually gave me a book where it was basically focused on like being a better man, and that was an example. And I remember reading that. I was like, man, let's do it at everything. And I was like, oh, okay. And I didn't know what the lesson was.
Right, exactly.
I didn't understand. I was just like,
or Sodom and Gomorrah in the Bible.
I know the names, but I don't know what that story is.
We probably shouldn't. I don't know if we're able to.
Talk about it.
Yeah.
Well,
it's
maybe.
not good. But there's a lot of wild ass stories in the Bible.
It almost sounds like that. It just sounds like it sounds like a parent telling a kid of what could happen in the world. Like the way it's almost like, hey, if this happens, then this can. If you do this, then this can happen. So you better not do that.
Don't betray God.
Yeah, exactly. That's really. Ooh, excuse me. Sorry. That's really interesting. Like, I just. Like, they could have made this like so much cooler. Like, not to sound bad, I don't want to piss anybody off, but it's just the like, how come nobody has taken the Bible and made it like a cool action movie or like a cool superhero? Have they?
You didn't used to watch them movies?
Which movie?
Not the movies, the shows and the movies. I don't know. My grandma and grandpa, my mom.
This is what you do. You take The Rock, you put him as Job. And then people will go watch it. You have to like.
No, Mel Gibson.
What, Passion of the Christ?
Yeah,
I remember seeing that, and I remember being in there, and I was like, "Why do y'all want to see this?"
That's what I.
Why y'all want to see?
Like, this is very weird.
Are you like? I want
sadist or masochist?
That, but then also, what if there were people who went to go see it who didn't believe in Jesus or God just to watch fictional Jesus get beat up?
Oh, then they're psychopaths.
The holy shit. But I remember watching it with my mom, and I remember it was my mom, my grandma at the time, and I think my older sister, and they wouldn't let my little brother or little sister go. Went to go see it, and I was like, okay, I remember this. Yeah, I know about this story. He get beat up and he dies and comes back.
Y'all watched that too?
You said what?
So y'all watched that too?
The Passion of the Christ? Yeah, we watched it. I'm in the theater, and I remember, and it was packed and whatever, and people were crying, and I was just like, we know this story. Like,
well, you had the real life version of it in Mexico.
Oh yeah. Oh, for those who don't know, I don't think I've ever said this on the podcast. So, my father's from Mexico. My mom's born in the States. Family's from Spain, but my father is straight from Mexico, from a small town. I think it's called Iramico, if I remember right, near Chihuahua, which is like a city in Mexico. Anyway. There was one point in time where we were really young. It was me, my older sister, and I think my little brother. I don't think my little sister was born yet. We lived down there because my father's parents lived there. So we stayed there for maybe like 3 months or something like that, just to kind of like, I guess maybe see where my dad came from. So every year they had this, what is it called? Not a recreation. What is it called? A dramatization almost, where they reenacted Jesus getting crucified. And basically this is what happened is you would hear. It started off, it's quiet, and there's a day that they would do this, and everybody played a certain role. You had a guy who was playing Jesus, and you had people who played the Roman soldiers, and you had people who were other people who got crucified along with Jesus. Anyway, it's quiet. It was like sunny day, and you start to hear these distant footsteps, which is the Roman soldiers like coming for Jesus. That's what it is. And basically it got louder and louder, and it was like almost like a big production. And I remember being inside my grandma's house, and I remember hearing do 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 dude, in unison. And then all of a sudden I came outside and you see the Roman soldiers, but then you see Jesus, and it's almost like they do it as a tribute, because the guy who's playing Jesus, he has to carry this cross all over town, and it's like a big ass cross, and he's like got the thorns or whatever. I don't know if he had real blood, but I remember seeing blood on his head, and he's just carrying it, and they're recreating him getting crucified. So he goes around all of town, and then they go to the town square in the middle, and everybody follows them. My dad was a part of this production, and I remember you just see the guy get put up. He doesn't get nailed like in real life. He gets tied to the cross, and he gets tied, and it's like 3 or 4 people just tied up there in the cross, and they do this as a reminder or like a tribute or whatever. And I remember at the time not thinking much of it. Like I didn't know, like, this is crazy. But yeah, like in Mexico they would do that. Because, like, I think the first time I started to question things was when sometimes, I don't know, they probably do it in other lands who are Christian or Catholic, where sometimes, I know in Mexico they do it, where you say a prayer, and sometimes, you kind of almost bargain with God. You go, God, please, if you help me with this, I'll be better at this, right? You're bargaining. So there would be people who would be like, please, I just want to get healthier, and like, I want this disease to go away. If you do that, I'll walk this 2-mile long rock path on my knees the whole way. And people would do that, because what would happen is they would pray, all of a sudden they would start to get better, and then people would be like, well, I gotta go do it, and they would just walk like on their knees.
Holy shit.
Just because they promised God, and people were like that, and there was like a bunch of people, but it was like a stony path, and by the end of it they were like bleeding on their knees and stuff.
See, I believe in prayer, because I mean, I'm a spiritualist, so like, I've seen miracles and pretty cool things happen. My mom is a faithful woman, and has done so much wild shit with like her kids. Like she wasn't just on her own doing leaps of faith. We were there. Like, we're about to die. This is crazy. I'll be like, no, we're gonna be all right. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. That's cool. So I definitely believe in prayer. And I feel like the bargaining part, to me, from my perspective on how reality works, that's the energy that they put in exchange to receive something. I don't think that the energy you put in to give out to exchange something has to be that painful anymore. But
it's interesting. I feel
like it works.
In a way, is prayer manifestation?
I think prayer is different, because prayer feels like you're asking God for something. And like, I don't really practice that type of prayer, but I believe it works for other people. But manifestation to me feels like more like conscious creation on your own. It's to me, it feels like something that's a bit more hands-on than prayer.
Because it makes me think, what if in a way, when we pray, because basically, essentially, if you truly believe and you pray and stuff, you're praying that it's going to happen. And in a way, you're believing that it's going to happen, depending how strong your faith is. And so in a way, that kind of reminds me of manifestation, like, this is going to happen. What if, because in a way, you're praying to God, but really, you are godly. And in a way, you're kind of like, just going in a loop to like help yourself.
That's what I believe. But that's not what Christians or people who pray. A lot of people, or people who even believe in a universe. I think I even have different beliefs than people who like believe that the universe is going to like enact divine timing or like things like that. Because I'm like, I don't know if the universe is like this like father figure who's like, I'm going to give you the thing you asked for. It doesn't even sit right with me. But
interesting. That's like so crazy. Religion is actually pretty metal, as they say on the internet. Religious is metal.
Not metal.
But it's just interesting, because then I know we've had this conversation too, to bring back like the angels thing, of how crazy that is. There's actually a lot of crazy things that happen in the Bible. Jesus flips out. People forget that. I love it when Jesus flips out, because he's flipping tables and hitting people and whipping them.
Oh my God.
But it always makes me wonder, because like, I think when I thought about angels, and I was like, I know I told you this, where I was like, if angels look like that, we can only imagine what God looks like supposedly, because he looks crazy, or you can't, if you look at him, you go crazy.
You die. That's what they say. You're going to die.
I wonder if he's ever lonely, because nobody can look.
I don't know.
Because
I don't think God's lonely.
Because in the Bible, didn't he talk to somebody through a bush? Was that him?
Yeah.
Okay.
A burning bush.
A burning bush. And he's like, I'll take this form of a burning bush to talk to this person. And then I do remember one story from the Bible where the people were leaving that town that was blowing up, but you couldn't look back, because if you did, you turned into stone.
Pillar of salt.
Did they say
Lot's wife?
Did they say why? Like, if it's just a town blowing up?
I think it's just like, don't look back at your old life or whatever. If God took you out of it, don't look back.
That's crazy. And if you do, you're turning into stone. You're turning
into a pillar of salt. God said, let go of your past. Okay.
I remember they did that in like a one of those religious movies, the Christian movies. And then I remember somebody's wife looked back, and he was like, don't look. Wife. There you go. Yeah. He was like, don't look back. I gotta. And then she looked back, and then all of a sudden she was dead. It's
interesting because that happened with Persephone's husband in Greek mythology, where he went to go save Persephone from Hades. And Hades said, like, you can go get her, but you cannot look back, or else I will keep her forever.
Oh, yeah. I remember that story.
And so I'm like, oh, that mythology of, like, looking back.
Looking back.
Very interesting. It's like a lesson.
It almost, sounds just like a story made to teach a lesson. That's what it sounds like. What was the thing? I think, do you know the story of, Gilgamesh? That a lot of people claim the Bible's based off of?
I think I've heard of it.
And so some people say that it kind of, there's similar stories in there.
Yeah, it's like Mesopotamian or something.
Something like that. But it's just interesting to me that the Bible has all these things, and a lot of Catholic stuff. Like, I want to meet the person who wrote it, like originally wrote it.
Several people.
Well, like, I want the very first person who was writing the stuff down to be like, because it almost sounds like a telephone game in a way, where they're like, here's what it is, and then somebody goes, actually, what he's talking about is this. Right. I want to see where along the way angels were written the way that they were written.
Right. And it intrigues me, like, language translation. We weren't as far along as we are now with language translation, and even when you watch animes, when people translate that, sometimes it's off. And so I'm like, imagine translating Hebrew, like, to what did it get translated first? It was Hebrew, and then something, and then German, but I can't remember what was in between Hebrew and German. But whatever, it's just translations. Even when I'm watching like animes, and I see how, because the animes we watch when they're subbed, they're not actually direct subtitles. It's not a direct translation from Japanese. It's kind of
like to make us understand.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I'm like, that's weird, because I'm like, what are they saying? I think about, I'm like, what are they actually saying?
Because they probably have certain like jokes in their culture that make sense in their culture, but not ours.
Exactly. And that like, I don't know. Because I'm like, what if, like, in Hebrew, they were describing turning into a pillar of salt or something like that, and like that's a phrase, like that's a catchphrase. Yeah. And it's like, you're gonna, I don't know, be sad or melancholy or something, like that's what it meant. Like, you get depressed or something like that. And it's like, she turned into a pillar of salt. She was real depressed. But then someone was just like, she turned into a pillar of salt.
Literally.
She literally turned into a pillar of salt. And like that, kind of like.
Yeah, it maybe it's something like that, because that's very ancient text, and there's no telling. Yeah. Oh Lord, but it's just so interesting. But I for some reason I am interested in the angels, learning more about them, just because some of them do look cool, but they're scary. And so I would think that angels that are supposed to be good is the quotations, wouldn't look so scary to people. But yeah, which moving to like another little topic that I wanted to touch on. So let me see. So it's very interesting. I was thinking about this. I don't know if this is the right way to phrase it. You know how as we get older, like as kids, most of the time we don't necessarily have a social responsibility of being responsible, because we're kids, right? Or we don't have no moral obligation to societal obligation to be nice or anything because we're still learning.
Right. But
somewhere along the way, as we get older, like you be a teenager, go to college, and then you start to become like an adult. This idea of we have a moral responsibility or moral obligation to do things a certain way, like the society deems. Like, like I've been thinking about that recently. It makes me wonder if that is just the thing, like it's always going to be there, and if it's a good or a bad thing. So this moral obligation thing in society, like really, when you think about it, nobody has to do anything,
right?
And I guess like it makes me wonder of whether or not it's a good or a bad thing, or if, like, you know, people always say you should act your age type of thing. And like I was thinking about that because like sometimes people always they kind of talk, maybe they look down on people who don't act in a way maybe that they deem responsible or an adult like. And I always try to wonder, I guess maybe it just happened because of history and people kind of make good positive images of role models and stuff like that. It's so interesting how, but I guess maybe we're humans, so we're like prone to, I think one maybe I shouldn't say fault, but one thing about humans is that we're very prone to judgment. Yeah. We're very prone to judge people. We're very prone to, if you're not living the way that I'm living, then you're wrong. And so it's very interesting that we fall to that, but maybe that's just like a thing that is in our nature. Yeah.
I think it's because we're still animals.
That makes sense.
We're animals who can talk.
And we have thumbs.
Yep.
And we can think and things like that. And so it's just so interesting. Like the same thing with like, I guess, which I think is turning around, allowing people to kind of be human and make mistakes. Mm-hmm. 'Cause for a while it kind of felt like people weren't allowed to make mistakes anymore.
Right.
It kind of felt like people started to become, what is it? Like the social police or something like that, where they would, or like the, I don't know what you would call it, but just like the police, as far as like, you don't think what I think, or you're not acting the way that you should be acting in my eyes, so therefore I deem you bad, or like you shouldn't have a platform type of thing. Yeah. And so, but
I have a theory on this.
Hey, what's your theory?
So it's because, to me, it's because of visibility. Mm-hmm. I think that if we still lived in like tribal times, we would have separate tribes living in separate ways, doing separate things. Not learning from each other's tribes, but because we can all see each other and like instantaneously now, there are people who've been raised by people who've been in the same type of tribe for their whole life, and their parents like passed down these beliefs or these ways of being. They grew up in schools with these people who believe in a similar way and they act in a similar way, and so when they experience something different, this like cognitive dissonance happens, where it's like you ran into a tribe that's not your tribe, and there's this kind of like type of like animalistic warrior type energy that comes up, like you're against my tribe, you're not in my tribe sort of energy. But I think it's happening so fast right now that people are like not knowing how to deal with differentiation. But I think we're learning that just because like the internet just kind of like, and suddenly we all see each other. And then not only can we see each other, we can interact with each other. Like there's another layer of connection that's happening. And so that's what it feels like to me.
That makes sense.
Sort of.
Yeah. Hawk, don't make me close the windows.
See, like Hawk seeing another family outside of this family. She's like, you shouldn't be outside of my house. Who are you? Yeah,
I think because like you're saying, we're in a way, I don't know if it's a good comparison. We're kind of like dogs. Dogs are pack animals. You know, or wolves, they started off as wolves and then became dogs, but dogs and wolves are basically like pack animals. They want to be a part of something. We ourselves as well, right. We go crazy if we don't interact with other humans. Right. You know, so we're basically tribes people, and then when we're a part of something, we kind of feel like we have to do everything we can to keep this thing going,
to preserve
the tribe, preserve the truth.
Right.
When in reality, it kind of works. The better way to do it is kind of be like, okay, we're part of the tribe, And then as things that come up that kind of go against our beliefs, we should look at them. And then it's not more so of a life or death situation anymore. It's more so of like, well, that's just not for me, you know? So, but, and then also that tribes of various different beliefs and different ways of seeing the world can coexist.
Yeah.
You know?
But like even us, we're kind of like a mini tribe, right?
Yeah, of course.
The rules of our tribe is that we're very open-minded and we let people mostly do what they want, right? But then it would be really hard for us to suddenly like invite someone into our home who's really rigid and like, who's like, this is the only way you can be, and if you aren't this, you belong in the dirt. We would probably like be like, you have to get out of, of the house,
of course.
And so like even us who are open-minded are closed about our open-mindedness. Like we don't want to be around people who are closed off, right? So like there's these rules that people have. And we separate ourselves with these rules. Like we wouldn't date each other if you were like a hyper Christian who hated gay people, I probably wouldn't date you.
Of course.
And if I was like, anyone who doesn't believe in quantum physics is an idiot, and I think they're, you know, like we wouldn't.
Yeah, of course.
I feel like there's an inherent separation between people, and like us getting closer and closer together as people and like mixing together, even like people being mixed race, that type of thing, like that type of mixed homogenization that's kind of happening. It's going to come with conflict.
Of course.
And pushing against. Can you not?
Hey.
Do you see this?
Hey.
She's...
I get that. That makes sense though. Which brings me to another like random thought that I had about that is to where I wonder, because we as humans are naturally like that, and you know those conflicts will come up, if maybe more so conflict is always going to be a thing for us. Like I don't like that's why I don't believe in utopias or anything like that, because I don't think that's possible. Not that it's a bad thing. It's always good to strive to make things better, but there will always be conflict because one, you just can't get everybody to agree on everything.
Yeah, as long as there's differentiation, there'll be conflict, because like unless we all become one thing,
isn't that like
certain things can't mix together. There's going to be like a type of resistance that happens.
Isn't that what some spiritual people believe? We should all just meld into.
That's what I remember when I first like kind of started talking about spirituality. I'm like, I'm not one of them people who always be talking about oneness. Like, yes, we all live on the same damn planet, but I'm me and you're you. Leave me the fuck alone.
It sounds like the show that I don't like as much, Neon Evangelion.
Oh, when they returned to oneness.
I was like,
that one thought.
Oh, this is so. I was like, I do not like this at all. And I was just like, no, I want to be individual.
I don't want to read y'all's thoughts. I don't want to feel y'all's feelings. And like we have the capacity to do that. I really feel like people do, but like, no, no.
Yeah. So that's crazy. But I mean, I guess I get it. People, you know, want to strive for something, but I don't think it's that. I just think we're too different and unique for that to ever happen. That's why I think sometimes I have an issue with, let me not say issue, I have my disagreements about religion sometimes, because my thing is like, people are always evolving, people are always changing. That's why I'm very big on redemption. Redemption is a thing. I think that people can always come back from, you know, something bad choices that they've made in their life, and they can always do that. One choice does not forever stamp them. Like if you're a Christian, like if somebody were to, you know, steal a lot of money from people and stuff, and then someone deems that they're going to hell for that, I'm like, well, no, they can redeem themselves to come back. Like that's why I kind of believe that. I think that whoever created us, if we were created, the person is probably kind of like me in a way.
Stop licking my feet.
They're kind of like me in a way where they're like, hey, I don't know what I was doing. I just tried something and the shit came out like this, you know, and they're kind of like, man, you know, they kind of seem like a father who wasn't ready for a child. And they're like, oh shit, how am I going to take care of this? Not to say that they're a man or a woman or whatever.
Yeah.
But they kind of seem like, you know, they weren't ready for whatever happened, and they were like, "Oh man, I got to step up."
Just imagine being like, "Holy shit!"
That's like crazy. I wonder if, because then it makes my imagination runs wild. What if okay, let's say there's God, right? But what if there's more than one, right? And like, but the one that created us is like, in a way, we're his child, and then, or his or her or whatever, their child. And what if they're like, and then each God has something like that, so they all have their own child. What if that is their parenting? I don't know if any of that makes.
I think about this.
That's hilarious.
I think about this.
I wonder if they were just doing their best. That's
what I think. Everyone's doing their best.
Yeah.
Including gods,
higher power, whoever.
Whatever.
So interesting. Well, good talk. I think that's a wrap for the episode. I really like it because this is some of the stuff I think about all the time. I still think about angels and how weird they look, because they don't be looking heavenly. If that what heaven look like, which one last thought to leave the people with? If angels look like that, is everybody gonna look like that in heaven?
Yes.
That's so weird. You just a bunch of eyeballs and a bunch of rings and a bunch of wings and stuff like that.
They should.
And hold up, there's that one angel that you talked about that you like that looks like a goat, a lion. That don't seem heavenly. Like they almost seem like enforcers. That's what they seem like. They seem like, hey, you better listen.
Yeah.
What? They're bullies?
I don't know if they're bullies, but they work for God. They're in an army.
God has them on payroll? Oh my God.
They just sit up worshiping God all day. But
they're
an army. And like the archangels are known as like fighters. They're not these like passive.
Yo, my mind is blown. The God is pro-war. No.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Have you read the Bible?
Oh no, I haven't.
God is very pro-war.
That's crazy. He's like, hey, I'm always strapped. That's what he's saying. He or she's saying.
Oh
that's
God.
Crazy. Anyway, that's a good way to end the podcast. Go look up some angels if you don't know what they look like. They look crazy. And you'll be like, wow, this is really wild. Episode 27 of Afternoon Programming. Once again, babe, thanks for being on the podcast.
Woo!
Do you want to plug anything?
Hello, I am a Luciferian demon. And no, I'm joking. I can be found on the interwebs at peathefairy.com. Not peathefairy1, not peathefairy_427. Not Be the Fairy. None of the fake profiles, but peathefairy.com is my website. P the Fairy is my Instagram. Okay, bye.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you're listening to on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure you follow, rate, and review. It really helps us reach new listeners. Also, make sure you follow the podcast on Instagram at Afternoon Programming and follow my personal page. It's Easy L. Got new music on the way, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.